Welcome back to the Aussie Shed, ladies and gentlemen, for another episode of Project Fairlady. Now, as you can see there, folks, the motor and the transmission are back in the body shell. Now, this is purely for the purpose of a dummy fit-up, because I'm about to start doing some fabrication. And the first thing I'm going to get onto is making up the new dump pipes. Now, you would have seen these flanges that I made up in a previous video. I don't think I'd done the separator there. But so yeah, the flanges are ready, and now I've just got to start all the pipe work off the back of them. So I've got a big box of stainless mandrel bends over there. So let's go and have a look at our raw material. So as you can see there, folks, we've got a nice box of mostly stainless mandrel bends, V-bands, all varying size. There's some 3-inch stuff in there, there's some 2-inch stuff. There's a couple of tapers. These guys, they're going to be part of our dump pipes, transition out of the back of the turbo into the dump pipes. Yeah. Good quality V-band joiners. These are an excellent, they have a lip on them, so they sort of line up. And they're a quick disassembly one too, you know, you can just loose it off and then flip this up. You don't have to undo them all the way. I've used them on other vehicles, top quality stuff. So yeah, hopefully I'll have enough there to build the dump pipes and then start into the exhaust system. So I think we better get the Fairlady up in the air and take a bit of a look, eh? And here we are, folks. Passenger side dump pipe up in here, coming down through here. Our driver side. We've got the starter motor back in so we can sort all our clearances around that. It's kind of way up in there, and we'll start bringing that guy down. It's got to come down, curve around the starter motor, and then sort of go back around this way. So I guess I'll just start getting some mandrel bends out and start sort of nutting a bit of this out. As soon as I get anything substantial, I'll give you guys a bit of a look. Alrighty, I'll be back shortly. It's starting to get there. Alright, bit of an angle on the bottom here, I reckon. Starting to take shape though. So I'm working on something that's a little bit tricky at the moment, folks. It's the driver's side dump pipe, and it has to come down and snake around the starter motor and go back underneath. And the issue is that there are things in the way and it's really tight. If I was to go to a slightly smaller dump pipe, like say 2.5 inch, it would be a bit easier, but I am really adamant on using 3-inch dump pipes. I honestly believe a 3-inch dump pipe is what this thing's going to need. So I have to work out how to do it and still maintain things like ground clearance and all that sort of stuff at the same time. So it's a bit of an ask because there is a lot to contend with in that area. So let's go underneath and I'll have a bit of a chat to you and I'll show you a bit of the sort of methodology of what I'm doing and just a bit of that. So let's go under and have a look. So this is what I'm currently working on, folks. I'm trying to work out how to get the dump pipe out of the back of the turbo. So we've got a little bit of a bend in 2-inch, then we've got a cone which transitions up to 3-inch, and then we've got to come down, snake around the back of the starter motor here, and the whole time try to not step below this bar here. So what I've done, I've got a just a piece of 20x20, and I've got it wedged up underneath the front rails, and that's my low point on the front of the vehicle there. The front rails are actually they're probably 10 or 15 mil below the pinch welds on the sills on the outside. So this is our low point. So ideally with your exhaust system, folks, you really don't want to have anything sneak below the bottom line of the car if you can help it. That way you've got maximum ground clearance and you're never in a situation where the car's going to bottom out, you know, parts of the car, which is 99% of the time, the exhaust system bottoming out on rough roads and over speed bumps and crap like that. I successfully did this with my 370 GT, but there was a hell of a lot more room. So it has a 3-inch exhaust. It does actually go in a 2.5 towards the back. That being said though, there were flex joints and also cats, 3-inch cats in this roughly the same area on that vehicle. Didn't have the issue with the starter motor to get around, but there were other issues on that vehicle. So yeah, it's a similar layout to what I've built before. It's a design that I use quite a lot on V configuration engines. But yeah, it's a bit of an issue here, folks. The cat's also a step up inside. It's a 3-inch cat with a 4-inch body. And I'm using V-bands to join it all together, which steps down as well. So 3-inch V-band is about the size of a 4-inch pipe externally. So you've either got to have your pipe tucked up so that your V-band still stays up under this, or above this, sorry, or, you know, possibly have your V-band hanging down slightly. But, you know, there are situations where, of course, you can't get what you want. You are really stuck with, you know, what's at hand. Like, the physical layout of the vehicle will dictate that there are some compromises that you have to make. And, of course, you don't really want to make compromises. You want everything to be perfect, but sometimes you just have to, folks. So what I'm doing here is I've tried a few different bends, cut a few different ways and stuff, and I'm trying to sort of sneak around this starter motor here. Now that's sort of the best configuration that I've found so far, which I will then, this will sort of sit in here, and then I'll put another mandrel bend on there to shoot back that way, sort of thing. But straight away I've got to go onto my catalytic converter. It's got to be right here, sort of thing. But it's still not really ideal where I want it. The problem is the back of this heat shield on the starter motor. I don't want to remove the heat shield on the starter motor. I've already trimmed this mount on the back where the back bolt goes in to secure the heat shield at the back. It's the only fixing at the back, so you really need it there. There are two fixings at the front, one up there, one there, and only this one at the back. But what I think I'm going to do is I've trimmed as much as I can off that, and it's still really not enough. I still feel I can get a little bit more, but what I'm going to have to do is take the heat shield off and either bend or cut off the bracket that's on the starter motor, relocate it, and then flatten off this section of the heat shield, and then re-drill and re-bolt through just to get rid of this hump that's here, and also possibly use like a button head bolt that's like really flat, you know. So yeah, this is the sort of stuff that you come up with all the time on exhaust systems, folks. It's why custom exhaust stuff costs so much money to get built, particularly if it's going to be, you know, stainless steel mandrel bends. You're looking at you know, a high material cost, high cost of your gas if you're going to back purge any of it, and just the labour involved to get it absolutely perfect, because there's a big difference in exhaust systems between, you know, a good exhaust system and a really good exhaust system, and the difference is a hell of a lot of hours work to make everything just be absolutely perfect. A lot of it is sort of falls into the suck it and see scenario as well, where you use bends and you kind of make sections up, and then honestly a lot of the time it just doesn't work. Like you've had the best intentions and you've had a great idea for something that's going to be right, and it might be really close, but it might be just enough out that you can't actually use it, that you've got to go to another plan, you know, you've got to go to plan B kind of thing, which means all the work that you've done previously to get it almost right just basically goes in the scrap bin. So wish me luck, folks. Like I say, I'm going to take that cover off, modify that a bit, but you can see why buying off-the-shelf exhaust systems and downpipes and dump pipes and things like that is, you know, the preferred choice if you're not set up to do this kind of thing, because you can just, it'll do your head in, folks. It'll do your head in. But here in the Aussie shed, folks, the bigger the challenge, the greater the enjoyment at the end of it. So I'll get this off, make a couple of modifications to it, folks. I don't know when I'll be turning the camera back on, when I'm doing this or when I've got this section sort of finished. There's so much nutting out with all this sort of stuff. It's very hard to sort of film me standing around, you know, hand under my chin thinking about stuff for hours and hours, and, you know, holding up mandrel bends and joining bits on and cutting them off and all that sort of stuff. Anything that I sort of come to that's major like this, I'll whip the camera back on and I'll show you anything that I think might be of any relevance to you if you're going to give this sort of thing a bit of a crack yourself. So I'll be back, folks. Right, folks, as you can see, I'm a little bit further along now. I've got substantially more time into it than the last bit of footage that I took. You can see this this dump pipe here it's certainly getting there, you know. I ended up doing quite a bit to this starter motor heat shield here. You know, as I mentioned, I was going to flatten off the bracket and all that sort of thing. Quite a bit of work in doing that. I didn't chop it off and re-weld it. I just bent it around almost completely flat, flattened out the heat shield and put a button head bolt in there, and it gave me the clearance that I needed to be able to get this around, because I'm probably 10-15 mil off the body or off the floor pan under there, and I've got probably I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 mil between the bolt on the starter motor heat shield there. So I've taken absolutely every millimetre that I can to be able to get this through properly. You can see with my clearance bar here, I don't know if you can tell from that angle, but I am actually probably about this is probably about 7 mil below that line, right where this dips down here. I kind of had to go down and sort of scoop back up to get the height that I needed up in here, because I also need clearance for the cats. So obviously I'm working on the integrating the wastegate outlets now back into the main pipe. You can see that's going to kind of, you know, go somewhere in there. It goes back in. It's not going to be a screamer pipe, obviously, folks. Australia being the police state that it is, yeah, it's pretty hard to get away with anything like that. So that'll be run back in. Let's go over and have a look at that side, eh? So it's pretty obviously much simpler on this side. There's no starter motor or anything to snake around. But there is another clearance issue that we don't have on the other side. There's a bit of a nodule that sticks out of the side of the gearbox, and there's not as much clearance in the floor pan. So that side was harder to get through to that point. This side obviously easy to get through, but this side has actually got less space for the cat than that side does for the cat. So, but you can see we're getting there, folks. This has obviously got to then come back and join in along here somewhere. I've also done a bit of setup work under here for the cats, so I'll grab the cats, folks, and we'll go underneath and I'll sort of show you where I'm at with that too. So this is the passenger side cat face. You can see I've got the V-band flange already welded onto it there, and it sort of sits somewhere there like this. Yeah, you can see clearance is really hard fought over this side. This piece here on the gearbox there is the problem. Between that and the floor pan, there's almost no room. I had to sort of sneak back just past that because my V-band clamp is going to take up a bit of space there. This pipe here has to be adjusted on this joint here and drop back down onto the bar to get me a little bit more clearance up there. But yeah, I've taken up every millimetre of space that I can to sort of enable me to make it all sort of fit. So that's how the passenger side's going to go. Let's have a look at the driver's side one. So as I say, folks, a little bit more room on this side now that we're through there, but still, you know, adjustments kind of need to be made. There's more clearance around the gearbox. And the same with the floor pan. It's nowhere near as tight as the other side is in that area. But, you know, you just take the good with the bad. Like I say, this was a lot harder to get through to this position, whereas that was reasonably easy, but now this is a lot harder to set up. So both of your cats will be sitting here. It's a pretty decent spot for them. Ground clearance is still pretty reasonable. They do hang down ever so slightly because of the bigger body, but it's only about 10 millimeters below this outer chassis rail on each side, so very, very good ground clearance still. So yeah, that's about where I'm up to with these guys, folks. But I'll tell you what, how about I whip both the downpipes off and take them over to the bench and give you a bit of a look at them. A lot of the welding's done, but let's get them off and you can have a look at them while they're under construction, eh? Bear with me, folks. I'll get them off, we'll hit the bench. And here they are, folks. So what's this guy? This is the passenger side pipe. You can see the wastegate pipe is still sort of in tacked up position, where the main pipe is sort of fully welded and welded on the flange. So yes, a lot of work, guys, a lot of hours and stuff involved in this. And here's our more complicated one, which is our driver's side guy, which has to sneak around that starter motor in two positions, you know, particularly in this area here, and also your wastegate pipe has to sneak around the starter motor where it sort of positions there. But they're certainly coming along, folks. They're certainly coming along. And it is a ton of work, guys, but in my experience, this is the only way to get absolutely perfectly fitting dump pipes and exhaust systems, unless you have something that's specifically made for your combination. You know, I have aftermarket exhaust manifolds, aftermarket turbos. Yeah, you can buy aftermarket dump pipes and stuff, but they're not specifically for particular manifold turbo combinations, and they're all in slightly different places. And as you can see from under the car, to get the absolute maximum ground clearance, you really need to take every millimetre that you can into consideration, and that involves the tiniest movements, and things being pushed one way or another are a matter of, you know, just a couple of millimetres to make it all sort of work. So that being said, that's why it's so hard to get stuff like this off the shelf that fits really well, because there's just too many things to take into consideration. I would never even contemplate making something like this for someone without the car, because there's just too many things to take into consideration. For example, there's no point me finishing these and making a jig off them, because the chances of someone else having my exact combination is going to be very slim, so it's just basically a waste of time. And even if it did, I'm really not confident that I could actually reproduce them that accurately without a very, very complex jig, which isn't really worth the time just to make a few sets, you know. But it's come along, folks. Hopefully next time I turn the camera on, I'll have these things finished. I'll have the V-band flanges welded on, and the wastegate dumps will be incorporated into the main downpipe dump pipe setup. And then from there, we'll start moving into the, we'll get the cats on and we'll start moving into the X-pipe. So I'll be back again, folks. It's going to take me a few hours, but only seconds for you guys. I'll see ya.
Yeah, I was hugging a tree when a lady at the zoo was amused by me. I said, hey girl, you think I'm cute to see? You're cute too, so come and get yourself introduced to me. She got closer. I said, listen, you look like your life's good, but one thing's missing, it's me. I might be the wrong species, but love accommodates for many different niches. So don't let it trouble you. I may be an animal, but I'm a fanatical cuddler. She wanted to snuggle. I told her I'd love to. I said I'd climb down, then I'd come and climb up her. I wanna ride up on your back like a rucksack. What's that? You like my tummy? Wanna touch that? Tickle it. My first soft, come and jiggle it. I'll wrap my paws around till you're in the thick of it. Yeah, I wanna squeeze you nice and tight, then hug a little harder, and love you like koalas do. I wanna snooze in the sunlight, then nap a little harder. Wanna hug you like koalas do. I love you, koala. Don't be taking pictures of the plastic.
So we're pretty much done now, folks. You know, as you can see, it all sort of turned out pretty good. The tightest area of clearance is still on the back corner of that starter motor, but there is clearance there. The wastegate pipe going around this side of the starter motor is, you know, sort of nothing too hard about that. Once it was sort of started, it was just a matter of going from here, which I think is where we were on the last footage, and then just sort of snaking back and into our main pipe there. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. This angle's sort of slightly off. I probably should have gone around a little bit more, but the issue is I didn't want to come too close to here and you know, sort of be in the firing line where our ground clearance issue is here, because this is, like I say, at that point it's probably about 10 mil below the chassis line. Unfortunately, with something like this, you are subject to the layout of the vehicle and the clearances that you have available, just to be able to sort of make it all work. You can see the cats are in there now. I ran out of mandrel bends to finish the wastegate pipe into the side there, but we'll go under it a little bit more, and I'll talk about another couple of things. So you can see the O2 sensor bungs are in as well, folks. There's one O2 sensor going to be mounted up here. They're just sort of in front of the cats. The other one's up in there. You can see where that guy is. They're just sort of sneaking up between the gearbox and the transmission tunnel. They're both the same distance from the outlet of the turbo. This one's a little bit further away from the cat than this one is. That's just because of the extra pipe that's needed to get this bend around here, but they're both the same distance off the back of the turbo. This dump pipe, I think it measures at about 450 from the outlet to where it sort of goes in, and the one on this side, I've measured it, I think 450 ends up about here somewhere. So I ran out of mandrel bends for this, folks, so I'll put another bend on here to go that way, and then I'll use another bend to take it into the side, but I'll just mark it so it's the same length. So wherever I can, I'm trying to match distances and stuff, just because, well, I've got to do it some way. I might as well match the distances, you know, with things like that. Yeah, clearance with the cats, folks. We'll go under and have a little bit more of a look at the cats and the clearances and everything. So this cat placement, folks, it was one of the biggest elements in the design factor of the downpipes, because there really is no other place to mount these cats. These are just basic Magnaflow cats, and with cats you need to place them as close to the engine as possible, because they need a lot of heat to function correctly. The closer they are to the engine, the better they work. So unfortunately they need to be in front of this gearbox cross member, because once you pass the gearbox cross member and back down here on the car, they're really too far away. So this is it. So having the cats is part of your sort of starting position when you're designing these, because you really need to work out where exactly you can fit the cats. Now the cat placement is fairly similar in this direction, but there's a couple of little differences, like I say, due to clearances with the gearbox and stuff. Like there's more clearance on this side between the gearbox and the floor pan, but this side's a lot tighter. A bit of a lump on the side of the gearbox there, that's a bit of a problem. Clearance is pretty good. I think the body of the cat is hanging down slightly, maybe 5 to 10 mil. I kept the back of this one up. From when I came through here, I was able to go around and continue up slightly to get most of the body of this cat, and also help me out with clearance for the V-band clamp. V-band clamps will turn right away as well, so they're not hanging underneath like they are now. They're just there for convenience for me, taking them on and off, but they'll swing up out of the way. Part of the reason why I love V-band clamps, plus there's no gaskets or anything like that involved. You know, they're such a great thing when you're taking exhaust systems on and off. I basically never use just normal exhaust flange gaskets, just because they suck. So yeah, the cats are sort of one of the defining things. When you're building something like this, there's certain things that you have to suss out beforehand that you can't change. It's just like, well, you know, this has got to be here and that's got to be there, and I've just got to work between those points and use what ground clearance and side clearance and transmission tunnel clearance I've got, work out what I want, how I'm going to get there, you know, how we're going to kind of put it together. And a lot of the time things like this will become apparent as you go along, and it'll kind of design itself as you start joining the dots together, you know, which is basically what happened with this. So what I might do, folks, I might take these off and bring them back to the bench, and I've got the old dump pipes that were on the car down here somewhere in the shed, and I'll explain some of the design differences and why there were a lot of flaws in the old downpipes and why this is a much better solution. Alright, I'll get these off, we'll get them on the bench, and we'll start having a look at them, eh? So there's the old downpipe, dump pipes that were on the car when I bought it, folks. You can see they're full 2.5 inch, separate wastegate pipe. They've been MIG welded. They look like they've been purchased from somewhere just because they're not made with mandrel bends. The bends have been made to suit, so they're either a mass-produced thing or someone's turned out quite a few of them, you know. But they're really not ideal in many ways. They're really not what you want. Firstly, you can see that they've decided, oh well, we're going to go 2.5 inch, because the car did have a 2.5 inch exhaust system on it, which was a real piece of junk. It was a mixture of random press bends and mandrel bends and rusty pipe and, you know, just all sorts of crap, all sort of really badly migged together, and it was just a hodgepodge of garbage. And this was sort of the beginning of it. So they've decided they want to go 2.5 inch. So what they've done is they've gone 2.5 inch straight out of the back of the turbo, which is just ridiculous, because you can see the issue that you have is if you go 2.5 inch out of the back of the turbo, you've got to actually smash the pipe in around the bolts to get clearance to be able to get sort of nuts and bolts on. It's just, you know, it's just bloody ridiculous. And then you get a situation inside where you get all these, I'll get a torch. Yeah, where you get all these sort of bits like this where it's just, that's where it was bashed in around the bolt holes and stuff, you know. You can see the welding job there where the O2 sensor's been put in. There's just lumps and dags and crap hanging in it everywhere. Another lumpy bit there where where another bolt hole is. You know, big welds around the inside of the wastegate pipe there. There's barely clearance actually for the wastegate flap to open on these. Overall, just not an ideal design. The wastegate pipe enters really early, and if you look, here we go, this will freak you out. If you look down in here, you'll see where the wastegate pipe comes in, and it's just absolutely hideous. It's not properly been cut out, like it's only probably 2/3 of the size of where the pipe actually interferes. If you stick your finger in there, you can feel there's heaps of pipe that should have been removed with a die grinder, either before or after that was sort of welded together, and you can see all the lumps of MIG wire and welding crap that's in there where it was sort of where it came through, you know. But that's what you get, folks. I don't know how much they would have paid for these things, but they're just, in my opinion, they're just not worth the money, folks. Flange on the bottom, like I said, I hate flange joints, and where they had this flange joint, it's right beside the starter motor and in a really shit spot. So when they started on the exhaust system, they actually had to start a join with the flange in a really bad spot right near the starter motor, and it's just a really shit place to have a join for quite a few reasons. It just takes up space, and it was right where you wanted to have a bend, so you couldn't have the bend transitioning in the right area. So what they'd done on the other exhaust, there was kind of the other half of the flange was sort of mid bend, and the bend didn't flow properly. Like if you've ever seen a mandrel bend that's had something welded to it on the wrong angle, it was that sort of a thing. It was just a, you know, it was just terrible. It was just terrible. So this is how you get over those problems, folks. The outlet on the turbo is a neat 2 inches, so you don't need to go bigger than 2 inches on the outlet from the turbo, which, as you can see here, gives you plenty of clearance around your bolt holes. You don't need to be smacking anything in to have clearance to get all your bolts in. I've got lots of clearance around the studs that come through to put washers and nuts and everything on. No worries at all. It's just really simple. And what you do, standard practice, guys. Whatever pipe size you want and whatever pipe size you got to come out, you just do a transition between them. This is a standard cone. You can get them in mild steel, stainless steel. You can get them transitioning from whatever size to whatever size. We want to go from 2" to 3", and that's what you do. As soon as you can fit it, you come out with your first bend in 2", go to your cone, and then straight into 3" as quick as you can. So you get that low pressure zone as close as you possibly can to the outlet of the turbo. Just, you know, really simple sort of stuff. And then from there, you've just got to work out how to get all your bends through. Like I say, this is the unfinished one for the passenger side. You can see the O2 sensor on there, V-band flange on that end there. Same deal with this one. Plenty of clearance around the pipes. You can see I've actually used the die grinder there slightly to clean off a little bit of weld, so I had more room for a washer on this. But you know, I haven't had to do anything that impacts the sort of pipe at all. Yeah, pretty sort of happy with it all. Again, that's your O2 sensor bung, V-band flange on the bottom. You know, all pretty good. Alright, let's go and have a look at the top now. Now, I don't have a spare exhaust housing, folks, or I'd show you with the exhaust housing. So the inside of your exhaust housing, like I say, it's a neat 2", and what this separator does here is it divides off and makes a complete circle out of that area where your exhaust comes out of the turbine. So you just get a beautiful round unobstructed pathway into your exhaust system, and it separates your wastegate off. Now you can see the wastegate hole here. It's had a lot of porting done on it to make it as big as possible and to get as much flow into it as possible, and it's been sort of bell-mouthed where I could. Now I'll show you with the gasket. So that's roughly what you have there. If I had an exhaust housing, I could probably show you in a little bit more detail, but I've kind of taken up all the space that I could. I could possibly bell-mouth slightly more across here, but your wastegate flap opens up from the bottom, you know, so there's less gains to be had across the top side of the wastegate than the bottom. So yeah, just, you know, really opening that up to get as much wastegate flow, because if you're trying to control your boost pressure, anything that you can do to help is sort of helpful. Generally, I don't use internal wastegates unless you sort of have to. And this setup came with the car. It's very hard to get manifolds with external wastegates for the Z32. So basically, we're just going to see how far we can sort of push this setup, but I think it should be okay. So you can see the difference here with the sort of two side by side, the size of the hole for the wastegates, how much flow you've got and everything. The fact that there's actually no divider on this dump pipe here, which really makes it a bit of a joke. If you're going to have a separate wastegate pipe to your main pipe, you have to have a divider, or there's no point in having it. Just because, you know, this is completely open in the back of the turbo, and you know, as this opens here, it's just going to shoot across into your main outlet there, and sort of vice versa. You're only probably going to be getting a small amount of the flow that should be going through this would actually be going through it. It's just, yeah, as I say, this thing has lots of issues with it. It's just basically a friggin' doorstop. It's really a piece of junk. So if you're looking for aftermarket dump pipes for your Z32, folks, this is what you should be looking for. You should be looking for something that's been professionally made and in this configuration, because this is the optimum configuration for the Z32 body shell, with that engine in it, with all the clearances that are required, with the starter motor particularly on this one and everything. You know, really doing the best job that you possibly can with it. And if you see dump pipes like this, just stay away from them. They're just garbage. You're really probably not going to get any benefit over a standard downpipe with this sort of thing, just because there are so many issues with it. Plus, it was really hard to get this off the car because of the issues with not even really being able to get spanners on some of these nuts in some of these areas. Like, it was just, yeah, you saw what it looks like on the inside. It's just a piece of junk. I know there's very little available on the market for Z32s in the way of dump pipes, particularly in Australia. So if you can find one that looks like that, I would suggest you buy it and stay away from crap like this. Right, folks, so that just about sums up this video on making these dump pipes and stuff. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope I didn't annoy you too much with a lot of the sort of theory and everything behind it, and why I was doing this and why I was doing that. But I think you really need to know, if you are going to attempt something like this, what's involved with it. and what are the things that you can't change and what are the things that you sort of can change with your design and everything like that. And just to show you guys that if you're aiming for a quality build, this is the sort of extreme that you have to go to. Not start with something like this, because if you start with shit, you'll end up with shit. Bit of a sneak peek for next week's video, folks. This is the X-pipe that I'm starting to build for the exhaust system. I've started a bit on the exhaust. I've filmed a bit of the footage already for next week, so hopefully it'll be next week. I am waiting on a few more bits and pieces, but you can see this is all shaping up really kind of nicely. Fancy sort of an X-pipe. But that's all we got time for now, folks. So I hope you liked the video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. I hope you're enjoying Project Fairlady and all my other videos if you've been looking at them. If you are interested in setting your home workshop up a bit on the cheap, you should have a look at some of my machinery videos on different things like my drill mill and my mini lathe and you know, belt sander and the bandsaws and all that sort of stuff, because they're all stuff that I put together pretty cheaply and that work really, really well. But anyway, as always, folks, I'll bloody well see you on the next one. Exhaust system next week, hopefully. Cheers.